My name is Sophie Turner, and I'm 32 years old. I've always been the one who seemed to fall short, even in a family that prides itself on success. My husband, Daniel, is a self-made entrepreneur, his name already etched in the business world as a visionary. My mother-in-law, Evelyn, is the kind of woman who always gets what she wants, charming, confident, and controlling. And then there's me, just the lawyer who works long hours, a little too obsessed with right and wrong, but never quite fitting in with the rest of the family's world of wealth and power. I've often felt like the outsider, the one who couldn't live up to the legacy they'd all built for themselves. But nothing could have prepared me for what I would discover one evening, when the very people I trusted the most betrayed me in a way I couldn't have imagined. I thought I knew them, but I was about to learn how wrong I was. I had just landed from a trip to New York, my mind buzzing with reports and clients. It was supposed to be a quiet evening at home, just Daniel and me, but I knew he was working late again. As usual. I didn't mind much. I never did. It was a pattern that had settled comfortably into our marriage. I worked hard, he worked hard, and we shared our few moments of peace when we could. That's how it was supposed to be, right? The door clicked behind me as I stepped into our apartment. I kicked off my heels, letting out a breath. It felt good to be home. I looked around, modern, clean, polished. I always thought I'd feel like part of something bigger in a place like this. But the truth was, I always felt like a visitor. The sound of water running caught my attention as I moved toward the kitchen. At first, I thought it was just the sink or the dishwasher, but it was louder, persistent. I frowned, confused. Daniel always left the water running when he was in the shower, but I hadn't expected him home yet. I walked toward the bathroom, and as I neared the door, I heard something that froze me in place, voices, faint, murmured, but unmistakably familiar. I leaned closer. Evelyn. Uncle Harold. My heart skipped. I froze. There, through the cracked door, I saw them. Evelyn, my mother-in-law, in the bathtub with Daniel's uncle, Harold, entangled in a way I never imagined. Their bodies were intertwined, the water cascading around them as they whispered, their faces inches apart. The world around me seemed to stop as my breath caught in my throat. I had walked into the most unimaginable betrayal. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. The room spun, and all I could do was stand there, paralyzed. The silence in the apartment was suffocating, broken only by their soft, intimate murmurs. Their voices now blurred into an indistinguishable buzz in my ears. My mind raced, trying to comprehend what was happening. What had been happening for months, maybe even longer? How long had they been lying to me? I took one step back, quietly closing the door. I turned the lock, the sound of the click reverberating through my entire body. It was the only thing that felt real in that moment. I stepped back, staring at the door in disbelief. There they were, locked in my bathroom. And in that moment, I realized my life was no longer what I thought it was. No more perfect marriage. No more trusting family. I was standing on the edge of a precipice, and I didn't know if I should jump or claw my way back from the ledge. My hands shook as I fumbled for my phone. I needed help. But who could I trust now? Tom, my old friend from college, the investigator I had once hired for a case, seemed like my only option. I dialed his number with a shaky finger, waiting for him to pick up. Tom, it's Sophie. I need you now. As the phone rang in my ear, I felt the weight of the situation settle over me like a cold blanket. This was bigger than I could have ever imagined. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was systemic, woven into the fabric of everything I thought I knew. Tom answered on the second ring. His voice, calm but full of questions, greeted me. Sophie, what's going on? I had to steady my breath. I need you to come to my place. Right now. I'll explain everything when you get here, but it's bad. Really bad. The line went silent for a moment, then Tom spoke, his voice firm. I'm on my way. I hung up, staring at the bathroom door. They're in there right now, together, lying to me. I will make them pay for this. And I realized, as I looked at my reflection in the hallway mirror, that I wasn't just angry anymore. I was cold, calculating. The fear and the disbelief were gone. There was only one thing left to do: take back control. The door handle rattled softly from inside. They knew I was there. They knew they were trapped. And as I stood there, in the silence that followed, a chilling thought crossed my mind. What if they have already planned this all along? I stood there, the bathroom door now locked, the weight of what I had just seen crashing down on me. My hand shook as I reached for my phone, dialing Tom's number with an urgency I couldn't quite explain. My chest felt tight, my thoughts a blur, but I knew one thing for sure: nothing would ever be the same again. Tom picked up after the second ring. "Sophie? What's going on?" His voice was calm, but I could hear the edge of concern in it. "They're in there," I whispered, looking at the door. "Harold. Evelyn. In my bathroom. Together. In my bathroom." A beat of silence. Then he spoke, his voice low and measured. "Stay calm. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Lock the door. Don't let them out." I hung up without another word, my eyes fixed on the bathroom door, feeling the heat rising in my chest. I had to think clearly. No more panic. This was my chance to take control. It wasn't just infidelity. It wasn't just betrayal. This was a well-planned attack, one that I hadn't seen coming. And I was certain now, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that I was right to feel like an outsider in this family. I thought I knew them. But I didn't. And I wasn't going to let them destroy everything I'd worked for. I stepped back from the door, feeling a sudden rush of adrenaline. I walked to the living room and grabbed the bottle of wine on the counter. My hands trembled as I poured myself a glass. The clink of the glass against the table echoed in the silence of the apartment. I thought about Daniel, how he hadn't been home for most of the week, how distant he'd been lately. How his excuses had become more frequent. He hadn't even noticed the changes in me, had he? The frustration, the unease that had been building between us. The cracks in our perfect little life had been there all along, and I'd ignored them. But not anymore. The silence of the apartment felt suffocating, the weight of the moment pushing against my chest. My mind raced through the possibilities. What was I going to do next? Confront them now? Wait until Tom arrived? I didn't know, but I had to make sure this went according to my plan. The thought of confronting them now made my stomach churn. No. I needed to think, to plan. And that's exactly what I would do. I paced around the apartment, the rhythmic sound of my footsteps in the quiet room steadying my thoughts. One step at a time, I reminded myself. One step. I needed to gather evidence. Evidence, something concrete that would nail them down. A momentary glance at the clock told me that Tom would be here soon. I had to make them pay for what they did. But I also had to be smart about it. Revenge could be a dangerous game if you didn't play it right. A soft knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. My heart skipped a beat. I walked over cautiously, looking through the peephole. Tom. He was standing outside, his face serious but calm. I opened the door just enough to let him in. "I didn't expect this to be a full-blown family crisis," he said, his voice steady as he walked in. I didn't say anything, just led him to the living room, where I'd already gathered everything I had. The documents, the phone records, the photographs. Evidence of the affair. Evidence of everything they were planning. He took a seat, glancing at the papers I had laid out. His eyes widened slightly as he saw the transaction history. "This is bigger than you thought," he murmured. "It's not just about Harold and Evelyn. There's money laundering involved. This could take down the entire family business." I nodded slowly, the reality of the situation settling over me like a weight. This wasn't just personal. It was financial. The kind of damage that would destroy everything. And I was in the middle of it. Tom leaned back, his fingers tapping on the edge of the table. "You need to be careful, Sophie. This is high stakes. Whoever's behind this won't hesitate to protect themselves. I didn't flinch. I'm not backing down, Tom. I've spent my whole life being the good daughter-in-law, the good wife. But not anymore. A deep breath. I felt the shift within me. I had been wrong. I had been playing by their rules for too long. Now, I was going to make them pay. I had to keep my focus. I had to stay sharp. This wasn't just about getting back at Harold and Evelyn. This was about survival. About taking control of my life again. The room fell silent, the air thick with tension. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, the cold determination settling inside me. Suddenly, the sound of a phone vibrating broke the silence. I looked down at the table, seeing my phone flash with a new notification. A text from Daniel. I'm on my way home. Don't be mad. We need to talk. I felt a sudden chill run through me. He wasn't coming home early. No, this was part of the game. They were all part of the game. And I had just moved my first piece. I locked eyes with Tom, the reality of what was happening sinking in. He's coming home, I said quietly. And I'll make sure he doesn't get away with this. Tom nodded, his expression unreadable. Let's make sure we're ready. I stared at the phone screen for a moment longer, feeling the weight of it all settle over me. There would be no more secrets. No more lies. No more waiting. It was time to take action. And this time, the game was mine. The sound of footsteps in the hallway caught my attention. My breath caught. Daniel was home. This was it. The moment of truth. I glanced at Tom one last time. Let's begin. And with that, the door creaked open. The door clicked open with a faint creak, and I stood there in the dimly lit hallway, my breath shallow. Daniel was home. I could hear him shuffling his keys in the entryway, followed by the unmistakable sound of his footsteps, slow, deliberate, casual. The man I had trusted for years was walking into my home, unaware that everything was about to change. I stood motionless, listening as he moved closer, then heard him pause. Sophie? Are you here? His voice had that familiar warmth, the kind that once made me feel safe. I didn't respond. My pulse was pounding in my ears as I forced myself to remain calm. I had a plan now. No more questions. No more pretending. I couldn't help but remember a quote I had once read, when you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. I was no queen, but in this moment, I felt like I was playing the highest stakes game of my life. And if I lost, everything would shatter. Dan, I finally called, my voice steady but cold, come here. We need to talk. There was silence for a beat, then his footsteps resumed, louder now. He appeared in the doorway, his face brightening when he saw me standing in the living room, a glass of wine in hand. He smiled, a weak smile, the kind of smile I hadn't seen in months. It was supposed to reassure me, but I could only see the cracks now. Sophie, I'm sorry, he said, his voice faltering slightly. I know I've been distant. But we? I interrupted, cutting him off before he could continue. We need to talk about something else. My eyes didn't leave his, watching his every movement like a hawk. I had to stay focused. His apology wasn't going to work this time. His brow furrowed, confusion crossing his face. What do you mean? I took a deep breath, the rush of air carrying the scent of the wine, and I began. I know about you and Evelyn. And Harold. His expression shifted in an instant, panic flashing in his eyes. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. You don't get to talk your way out of this, Daniel, I said, my voice sharp. I've seen it. I've heard it. The lies, the betrayal. I was speaking the truth now, and there was no turning back. You, Evelyn, and Harold, this has been going on for a long time, hasn't it? How long? His face paled, the color draining from his skin as he stepped back, as if to retreat, to escape. But I wouldn't let him. Not now. Sophie, please, he finally stammered. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I can explain. I raised my hand, silencing him. No. You don't get to explain this. You've been lying to me for months, maybe longer. I don't even know who you are anymore. I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands clenched into fists at his sides. But I was done. I was tired of the games. Don't get mad. Don't cry. Don't show weakness. That's what I had always been told, what I had told myself for years. But now I was done being the good wife, the perfect daughter-in-law. I've already talked to Tom, I continued, my voice growing colder. You know, the investigator? The one I hired to look into all of this. I know about the money you've been funneling. About the deals with Harold and Evelyn. Daniel's eyes widened, disbelief written all over his face. Sophie, what the hell are you talking about? You can't be serious. His voice trembled slightly, his fingers twitching as though he was considering something, an escape, maybe. I'm serious, I snapped, my jaw tight. You and your family, this is bigger than just infidelity. This is fraud, money laundering. And you thought I wouldn't find out. I could see his brain scrambling, working overtime to pull together some kind of defense, but it was too late. I wasn't falling for it anymore. The game had changed. You need to come clean, Daniel, I demanded. Because I won't stop until I take you down, every last one of you. I'll make sure you all pay for what you've done. He didn't speak for a moment, his eyes flicking from me to the floor, as if he was looking for a way out. But I had locked every door. There was no escape now. Not for him. Not for anyone. And that's when I saw it, the faintest flicker in his eyes. It was like a moment of clarity. A truth that was too heavy for him to bear. He had been planning this all along. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. That this conversation was being recorded, that someone else was listening in. A paranoid thought? Maybe. But in a world like this, where everyone was trying to control each other, I couldn't afford to ignore the feeling. He finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. You don't understand, Sophie. You never did. There it was. The admission I had been waiting for. The truth. I leaned in, my face inches from his, and spoke through gritted teeth. Try me. He recoiled slightly, a flash of fear in his eyes. I did it for us, he said, almost pleading now. Everything I've done, it's for our future. I was trying to protect you. I laughed, a bitter sound. Protect me? You've been planning to ruin me all along. The tension in the room could have been cut with a knife. I could feel the heat rising, and yet, I stayed perfectly still, watching him crumble under the weight of his lies. You thought you could control everything, Daniel, I said softly, but I see through you now. And I'm not going to let you get away with it. His shoulders slumped, defeat washing over him. But before he could speak again, my phone buzzed on the table. I glanced down, feeling the blood drain from my face. It was a text from Tom. Sophie, you need to know something. I found something you're not going to like. Someone else is behind this, someone you wouldn't expect. Get out of there, now. The air in the room thickened. The walls closed in around me. I looked at Daniel, my heart pounding. Who else could be behind this? I grabbed my coat from the chair and headed for the door. I'm done, Daniel. We'll talk later, when it's over. He didn't move. I didn't wait for him to. But we both know this isn't over, Sophie. Not yet. And as I stepped into the night, the cold air biting at my skin, I realized the full scope of the danger I was in. I wasn't just fighting for my marriage anymore. I was fighting for my life. I didn't wait for Daniel to speak. I couldn't. The weight of everything I had just learned was like a storm swirling in my chest. I turned on my heel and walked toward the door, my movements quick and precise. My heart beat in rhythm with the pounding of my feet. I needed to breathe, to think. I needed to get out of this suffocating apartment. Where are you going? Daniel's voice cracked, the panic slipping through now. But I didn't answer him. I didn't need to. The door slammed behind me, the sound echoing down the hallway, and for the first time in years, I didn't look back. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was a message from Tom, meet me at the usual place. It's bigger than you think. I felt a shiver run through me. What else could be bigger than what I had already uncovered? Money laundering, family betrayal. Daniel wasn't just cheating on me. He was destroying everything we had built. But there was something else, something darker and deeper. I could feel it in my bones. Someone else was behind all of this. I took a deep breath as I walked briskly toward the car. The cold night air hit my skin, but it felt like nothing compared to the cold anger inside me. The coffee shop was quiet, empty save for a few late-night patrons hunched over their laptops. The smell of fresh coffee and baked pastries lingered in the air, too normal, too calm. I needed clarity, but it was hard to focus with the constant buzz of adrenaline in my veins. Tom sat at our usual booth in the back, his eyes scanning the room, always the professional. His phone was placed flat on the table, screen down, as if he were trying to hide something. When I slid into the seat across from him, he didn't greet me with his usual confidence. He looked uneasy. Talk to me, I said, trying to keep my voice even, but the frustration leaked through. I was shaking inside, but I wasn't going to let him see that. What did you find? He hesitated before speaking. His voice was low, almost hesitant. You weren't wrong about Harold and Evelyn. But there's more, Sophie. Much more. I clenched my jaw. What do you mean? Tom looked around the room, then leaned in, lowering his voice even more. I've been digging through the financial records, and I found something I don't think you were expecting. It's not just Evelyn and Harold involved in the money laundering. They've been working with a third party, a much bigger player. My stomach dropped. A third party? Who? I could feel the panic rise in my chest, but I fought it down. I couldn't afford to panic now. Not when I was so close. I think you need to look at Daniel's side of the family a little closer. He paused for a moment. There's someone you don't know, someone close to you. Someone you'd never expect. And they've been pulling the strings the whole time. I felt my heart skip. My hands clenched into fists under the table. You're telling me Daniel is involved in this? No, Tom shook his head. Daniel is being manipulated. But he's been a pawn in this game all along. His voice dropped even lower, and his eyes locked on mine. It's Rachel. His ex-girlfriend. She's the one pulling the strings. I stared at him, the words taking a moment to land. Rachel? No. She's been out of the picture for years. That's what we all thought. Tom sat back in his chair. But she's been back in town for months. I've been tracking her movements. She's been meeting with Evelyn and Harold behind Daniel's back, setting up this whole thing. A wave of disbelief washed over me, followed by a rush of anger so fierce I felt dizzy. Rachel? His ex-girlfriend? How could I have been so blind? All this time, I thought I was the one he trusted, the one who was solid, but Rachel? The woman who had torn their relationship apart years ago, the one who had betrayed him then, was now pulling the strings behind everything? I leaned forward, trying to collect myself. How do we know it's her? What's her involvement? Tom slid a folder across the table. I grabbed it, my fingers trembling as I opened it. Inside were photographs of Rachel, Evelyn, and Harold, meeting in various locations around the city. The meetings had become more frequent, more covert. And in each one, Rachel was the one directing the conversation. It was there, in black and white, the proof that I'd been right all along. My life had been a lie. I need to see Daniel now, I said, standing up abruptly. This ends tonight. Tom grabbed my wrist. Sophie, wait. You can't confront her yet. We don't have everything. We need more evidence, or else this'll backfire. I yanked my arm free. I don't care anymore, Tom. I'm done. I'm taking back control. The tension in my chest felt suffocating as I left the coffee shop. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Daniel. I know you're mad, but please, let's just talk. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say to him. Not now. The drive back to the apartment was a blur. My mind raced with the possibilities, each more dangerous than the last. Rachel, the one person who had always been a ghost in our lives, now the ghost that haunted everything. When I reached the apartment, the door was slightly ajar. I stepped inside, my heart pounding, my breath coming in quick bursts. The place felt too quiet, like it was waiting for something to happen. Then I heard it, the soft rustle of fabric, the sound of voices from the bedroom. And then, a familiar voice. Daniel's. I'm sorry, Sophie, he said, his tone low, desperate. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. You need to understand, I didn't want this. But I wasn't listening anymore. I was done listening. It's over, Daniel. The silence after those words felt like a chasm between us. The room was closing in. It was time to finally end the game. I stood in the dim light of the apartment, my fingers trembling as I gripped the edge of the table. Daniel's voice still echoed in my head. I didn't want this, Sophie. I was trying to protect you. Protect me? I could feel the anger building inside me, making my chest tight. The more he tried to explain, the more his lies tangled around me, suffocating everything I thought I knew about him, about us. And now, Rachel, his past, the woman who had torn their relationship apart years ago, was the puppet master, pulling the strings on this entire mess. The walls felt like they were closing in, the air thick with tension. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, but the bigger picture remained out of focus. Who else was involved? Who else had been pulling the strings? I needed answers, but more importantly, I needed to be the one in control. We're done, Daniel, I said, my voice cold, each word biting through the silence. I could see the hurt in his eyes, the pleading, but I had already made my decision. There was no going back now. He opened his mouth, but I cut him off. You think I didn't know? You think I didn't see the signs? Rachel's not the only one who's been hiding things from me. His face twisted in confusion, but I could see it in his eyes now, the realization that he had lost. That all the power he thought he held had crumbled. His silence was his admission. You've been working with Evelyn and Harold, I continued, my voice unwavering, but it's Rachel who's been running this whole show. And I'm done. I'm taking back control. I turned, walking toward the door. Every step was a calculated move, each one a declaration that I wouldn't let this destroy me. I wouldn't let them win. The sound of my heels clicking against the hardwood echoed in the empty hallway, a stark contrast to the pounding in my chest. The adrenaline still coursed through my veins, my mind racing with every step. But one thing was clear, I couldn't do this alone anymore. Tom had to know. The parking garage was nearly empty when I pulled into the dimly lit space. The air felt colder, like the city was holding its breath. I made my way to the corner, where Tom's car was parked. He was leaning against the hood, his eyes scanning the surroundings. He looked up as I approached, his expression unreadable, but there was concern in his eyes. You look like you've been through hell, he said quietly, his tone almost sympathetic. I'm fine, I snapped, forcing my voice to stay steady. What do you have for me? He pushed off the car and walked toward me, lowering his voice. It's worse than you think, Sophie. Much worse. I got access to Daniel's financials and found something you didn't expect. I raised an eyebrow. What now? More lies? Tom hesitated before answering. Not lies. More. Connections. Rachel isn't just working with Evelyn and Harold. There's a third party, someone far more dangerous. Someone who's been pulling strings for years. They've been controlling Daniel without him even knowing it. They've infiltrated his business, his life. His family. I felt a chill run down my spine. Who? He met my gaze, his expression grave. I'm not sure yet, but I have a name. I need you to trust me on this, Sophie. It's bigger than any of us. I felt my heart race. A third party. The pieces were starting to shift, but the truth remained just out of reach, like a shadow I couldn't quite grab. Tom, I said, my voice shaky, what do we do now? He paused, clearly weighing his next words. We need to dig deeper. But we need to move carefully. Whoever is behind this won't hesitate to destroy anyone who stands in their way. And right now, you're their target. The weight of his words hit me hard. It wasn't just about the affair anymore. It wasn't just about Daniel, or even Rachel. This was about something far more dangerous. Something bigger than all of us. I nodded slowly, the air growing heavier with the weight of our conversation. Then we find them. And we take them down. Tom didn't respond right away. Instead, he looked over his shoulder, as if making sure no one was listening. His eyes locked on mine, intense and full of determination. You don't know who you're messing with, he said quietly. This goes beyond family. This is about power, control, and everything that comes with it. Whoever is behind this won't stop until they get what they want. My stomach churned as the realization hit me. This was about to get a lot worse before it got better. But I was already too deep. There was no going back now. I made my way back to the apartment, the weight of the night pressing down on me. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles white, as I drove through the dark streets, my mind consumed with everything I had learned. The walls were closing in, and I didn't know who to trust anymore. But I couldn't stop. I wouldn't stop. As I reached the apartment, I took a deep breath and stepped out of the car, the chill of the night air biting at my skin. The door to the building was locked, but I had the key. I always had the key. I paused before entering, my senses on high alert. The feeling of being watched crept over me again, like someone was waiting just out of sight. I shook it off, telling myself it was just the tension, the adrenaline. But deep down, I knew I wasn't just being paranoid. Someone was watching. And that someone was about to make their next move. The elevator doors opened with a soft ding. I stepped inside, the air thick with the weight of what was to come. As the doors slid closed, I looked at my reflection in the metal walls of the elevator. My face was pale, eyes wide with determination. This was it. There was no turning back now. I took another deep breath. And I prepared for whatever came next. I stood in front of the apartment door, my hand trembling on the handle. The final confrontation. Everything I had worked for, every betrayal, every secret revealed, had led to this moment. I knew what I had to do, but my heart pounded in my chest. The world had a funny way of revealing itself, bit by bit, until you couldn't ignore it anymore. The truth doesn't change according to our ability to stomach it. I had always believed in that, but now it felt too real, too raw. There was no denying it. Not anymore. I pushed the door open, the soft click of the lock sounding like the last breath of a dying dream. Inside, the apartment was still. Too still. I could feel the weight of the lies hanging in the air like a heavy curtain. Daniel was sitting on the couch, staring down at his phone, his face tired. He didn't look up as I entered, but I could feel his awareness, his unease, creeping through the room. He knew this moment was coming. He just didn't know how to face it. "You're here," he said softly, but it wasn't a greeting. It was an acknowledgement of everything that had been left unsaid, everything that had been crumbling for weeks. "I'm here," I replied, my voice calm but cold. "We need to finish this, Daniel. I need answers." His eyes flickered to mine, and for a moment, I thought I saw a glimpse of regret. But it was gone almost as quickly as it appeared. I stepped into the room, my eyes scanning everything, his posture, his hands, the way he sat rigidly on the couch as if waiting for something. "Who else is involved?" I asked, crossing my arms, standing tall. "You think I don't know, but I do. Rachel wasn't the only one. Who else is behind this? Tell me the truth, Daniel. He shifted uneasily. You don't understand, Sophie. I never wanted any of this. Rachel came to me after everything went south. I thought, maybe I could protect you. I laughed bitterly, cutting him off. Protect me? By destroying everything we built? By letting Rachel walk all over you? The words spilled out before I could stop them. This was never about protecting me, Daniel. This was about you, about your ego, your desire to have everything, to control everything. And you dragged me into it. The silence stretched between us, suffocating and heavy. He looked at me, his expression crumbling, but the truth was already out. There was no going back. I took a step closer, my voice steady, unwavering. You've been lying to me for months. You've been part of this scheme, this web of deceit, Rachel, Harold, Evelyn. All of them. But you're the one who's been playing the victim. His jaw tightened, and I could see the truth in his eyes now. He couldn't deny it any longer. I don't know what you want from me, Sophie, he said, his voice raw. But you need to know, this was never just about money. I did it because I thought it was the only way to keep things from falling apart. I couldn't lose everything. Again. You already did, Daniel, I whispered, the words bitter on my tongue. You already lost it all. Because you never really understood what mattered. A sudden realization hit me, and the room seemed to spin. The fear, the regret, the desperation in Daniel's eyes, it wasn't just because of what he'd done. It was because he knew exactly what was coming next. I turned away from him, heading for the desk where I'd left my bag. As I pulled out the papers I'd gathered, evidence of everything they had tried to cover up, I felt a sense of finality wash over me. It was time. Time to take back control, to put an end to the lies. I walked back toward Daniel, the documents in hand. These are your choices, I said, laying the papers on the table between us. You can either face the consequences now, or I'll make sure this gets to the right people. Your family, your business, it all comes crumbling down. His eyes flared with panic, but there was nothing left to say. He had no power over me anymore. But then, just as I was about to walk out, a thought crossed my mind, a realization so sharp and sudden it stopped me in my tracks. This wasn't just about revenge. This wasn't about punishing Daniel or Rachel. This was about me, my strength, my ability to rise from the ashes of everything they had destroyed. I turned back toward him, the weight of everything settling into my chest. I'm done, Daniel. But this isn't just for me. This is for every person you've ever used, every person you've betrayed. He looked up at me, desperation in his eyes, but there was nothing he could say. Nothing that could fix this. I took one last look at him, my heart cold, my mind clear. Goodbye, Daniel. As I stepped out of the apartment and into the cool night air, I felt the weight of everything lift. For the first time in months, I felt free. The silence of the city greeted me, but it wasn't oppressive anymore. The chaos, the lies, the betrayal, they were all behind me now. What lay ahead was unknown, but it was mine. I'd learned something through all this. Sometimes, the most devastating things in our lives, betrayals, losses, the feeling of being lost, are what push us to discover who we truly are. To find the strength we never knew we had. It had all been a test, a way to break me, to push me into something smaller, weaker. But they didn't know what I was made of. The night air was sharp, but it felt like a breath of fresh air. You're never as powerless as you think, I whispered to myself. It was a truth I would carry with me for the rest of my life. I had fought for control. And in the end, I had won.